Hello, it's a great pleasure to be here. The presenters came before me have shared a broad pictures of students' mobility, and not surprisingly, I hear China get mentioned a lot as a source of students going out. In my presentation, I will show you that actually more and more Chinese students choose to get their foreign diplomas within China through joint campuses. Given the time limit, I'll dive into it right away. Yes, thank you. First, what do I mean by joint campus? A similar and more popular term would be international branch campus, which refer to campuses established abroad by a university so foreign students can get their education or degree locally. Many Western universities have branch campuses abroad, which can sometimes generate more income for them than their main campus. Yet when these Western universities come into China, they find that they are welcomed but with conditions. When China joined the WTO in 2001 and opened its educational market to the world, the government imposed some restrictions. Foreign institutions could only enter China through forming partnerships with Chinese institutions and establishing joint venture institutions or programs. Therefore, in China, technically, there's no branch campus, but only joint campus. And this sort of partnership is addressed in the Chinese policy documents as Cfcis, a literal translation of the Chinese term 中外合作办学. Could you please turn to the next slide? Yeah, it's a Cfcis refer to cooperation between foreign educational institution and Chinese educational institution to establish an educational institution within the territory of mainland China and will provide educational services to Chinese citizens. The English literature that studies Cfcis usually address it as transnational education. Cfcis as a term is way too indigenous and cumbersome. However, it contains very important message here. For example, it establishes a dichotomy between the Chinese and the foreign, which implies division, contrast, and tension between them. For the Chinese regulators of Cfcis, there is always this tension between the wish to bring in good foreign educational resources and let Chinese universities learn from their more advanced Western counterparts, and the need to protect China's educational sovereignty and to prevent the foreign universities from dumping educational products or dominating their partnerships with the Chinese partners. This actually happened quite a lot, as the market prefer Western education and diplomas, and many Chinese higher education institutions have turned themselves into diploma factory or the chain store for Western universities. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'm giving you a general picture of the scale of the Cfcis in China via a set of numbers. Currently, there are more than 600 Chinese universities involved with more than 2,000 Cfcis programs or institutions. It involves more than 800 foreign universities from almost 40 countries. There are now more than 600,000 students and over 2 million graduates of Cfcis. More than 150,000 students are enrolled to Cfcis programs every year. These numbers may seem big, but if we actually put Cfcis into the context of the whole higher education sector of China, it is actually still pretty marginal. Most Chinese students will still go to public universities, and only about 2% Chinese students would choose Cfcis. Next slide, please. Cfcis has 3 different forms. The very basic one is a Cfcis program, which is an educational program jointly organized by 2 universities from both sides. These are easy to set up and get approved from the MOE. MOE is the Ministry of Education in China. A Cfcis institution, however, is a much more sophisticated form. With this form, the 2 sides come together to establish an institution that hosts a series of educational programs. It could be a Sino-foreign joint university that is totally independent from its mother universities. Here, by independent, I mean that it has its own legal status and it can hire its own staff and give out its own diploma. A Cfcis institution could also be a joint college established under a Chinese university. In this case, the college hosts a series of joint programs using the resources from the mother universities, and officially it is an affiliated college to the Chinese university. There are now more than 2,000 Cfcis programs, but only 12 independent Cfcis institutions. The MOE is loose on approving the Cfcis programs, but very tight on approving setting up institutions. And actually also not all partnerships work out. As you can see here on the slide, in 2018, there were 2,464 Cfcis in China, but in that year, 58 new ones approved, but about 10% of the old ones are closed due to either failing their quality check or not being able to recruiting enough students. Next slide, please. The expansion of Cfcis is always matched by the effort to align it to the overall goals set for them by the Ministry of Education. What are the goals? Well, they change over time. At the early stage from the 90s to the early 2000s, the goal is quite general. It was summarized as to bring foreign educational resources to cater to the domestic market. Scale is to be achieved first. This quick expansion was propelled by the profit-seeking of the foreign universities and their Chinese partners. In late 2000s, the focus of policy was quickly turned into quality and efficiency because many Cfcis programs proved to have neither. And the Ministry of Education now gets more selective in what sort of foreign universities they are letting in. And they also don't want the foreign universities to dominate the partnerships and marginalize their Chinese partners. The MOE what they want is integration and innovation between the elite Chinese and foreign universities, if possible. To achieve that, it has developed a series of policy documents to install a top-down design for different levels of Cfcis entities, which called for enhanced central coordination among different levels of Cfcis. For those lower-end programs, they're propped to bring in only the good resources, that is, the resources from great or even famous foreign universities. Those complement urgently lead Black or weak disciplines in Chinese university, or those that will be able to operating in underdeveloped areas in China. For those high-end programs and the institutions, their job is to maintain the dominance of the Chinese institution in the partnership and utilize the foreign resources to the service of China, to complement each other's advantages and to enhance the attraction, introduction, digestion, integration, and innovation of the high quality resources. So these high-end programs or institutions, they expected to become the role models and set up the best practice for the others. Next one, please. So more than 3 decades into the development of Cfcis, Chinese universities has gathered enough resources and momentum to go out of China and establish their own campuses abroad. But these campuses are still at an early stage. So far, only 3 Chinese universities managed to set up independent campuses abroad. In comparison to Cfcis, the Confucius Institutes and the Luban Workshop are developing far more quickly. The former is for Chinese language learning and cultural promotion, and the later is for vocational training of foreign talents for Chinese companies and factories abroad. Given the time limit, I will give you a more detailed introduction of these tomorrow when I present the Belt and Road Initiative. And that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Well done. Thank you very much. Let's move to Natalya. Thank you for that, Jie.
You're welcome.
Where's Natalya? Can't see you.
I am here.
You're here. Good. Over to you. Can you put it on presentation mode? Yeah, down the bottom there. That's it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalya, and I'm a first-year Cototel PhD student at Coventry University and Aarhus University. My master of research thesis explored South Korean public diplomacy, which included also research on South Korean university branches and campuses in Uzbekistan. So today, my presentation is about Uzbekistan and its current joint campuses and foreign university branches. Next slide, please. So, let me start my presentation from a brief overview of Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is a former republic of the Soviet Union, obtained its independence in 1991. Its population is just over 32 million people, and gross domestic product per capita is about $1,700 US. In comparison, let us say, to the UK, where gross domestic product per capita is 42,000 US. So it just gives you an idea of economy. Uzbekistan is the most populous country in Central Asia and has had high demand in higher education. However, its enrollment quota onto higher education institutions used to be the lowest in the region. For over 25 years, the country had not seen any radical reforms in the higher education sector. But when new president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, when he became president in September 2016, the authorities began showing interest in higher education reform. Thus, Deputy Prime Minister, for example, Aziz Abdurrahimov, stated that government of Uzbekistan is working on a concept of turning Uzbekistan into the educational hub of Central Asia within the next 10 years. Uzbekistan has lots of advantages to become the educational hub, such as its geographic position, multiculturalism, also Russian language prevailing in most universities, and also Uzbekistan being an Islamic country and attracting students from other Islamic countries. Next slide, please. So if you look at this table, you can see that for the 19-year period from 1996 to 2014, there have only been 7 foreign university branches in Uzbekistan. Compare this with 2018, when additional 9 foreign university branches were open. So you can see this huge increase. So the rapid growth in the number of foreign universities since 2018 indicates that transnational higher education has become the top priority in Uzbekistan's internationalization strategy for higher education. According to education researcher Ubaydullayeva, foreign university branches in Uzbekistan have complete autonomy over their academic curriculum and financial management, which is very different to the universities, for example, operating in China from the previous presentation. And as confirmed by numbers of respondents among leading government officials in Ubaydullayev's study, foreign university branches decide what courses to teach, and what textbooks to use throughout their degree programs they offer. And by contrast, local universities still follow the Ministry of Higher Education rules for both curriculum and finances. Students in foreign university branches and joint campuses have the right to choose their elective in addition to compulsory courses. Testing and assessment are completed in line with international standards. In national higher education institutions, on the other hand, students still attend classes from Monday to Saturday, and the schedule is set by the faculty or school management. So all classes are compulsory, and there is no choice of electives. Additionally, there aren't any mechanisms to check plagiarism at local universities. Next slide, please. So this pie chart demonstrates the higher education market share of foreign university branches and campuses currently operating in Uzbekistan. We can see that only a small number of countries have opened their branches. Russia and South Korea have the largest share of the market, totaling in 64%. This pie chart only shows the physical foreign university branches. However, besides foreign university branches and joint campuses, a number of local universities open joint degree programs. For example, Tashkent State University of Law have the joint degree program with Kazakh University of Law, where they provide training for their students and staff. Also, the Tashkent State University of Economics launched their joint double degree program with the Turku University of Applied Sciences, like it's a Finnish university, and also another program with London School of Economics. Have next slide, please. So recent research indicates that foreign university branches and joint campuses in Uzbekistan have international teaching staff who encourage students to develop critical thinking. Even local teachers working in foreign university branches are trained to teach students to question ideas. If teaching styles in national institutions teach students what to think, students in foreign university branches are taught how to think. So on this map, this is my final slide, you can see which countries globally succeeded in opening their joint campuses and branches in Uzbekistan, thereby showing which part of the world will be dominating Uzbekistan's higher education market share in the near future. So the majority of countries are from the global north, except for Russia and India. And thank you for your attention.